Now let's turn our attention to properties and fields in C#. Now properties and fields can be a bit confusing when you first look at these things. This is what we use in our classes to allow the objects that we instantiate from those classes to be able to communicate with the outside world, because our object's going to be needing to have certain properties set, sizes, temperatures, heights, widths, those sorts of things. So we want to expose those properties to the user, and we're going to use those properties and fields to collect, manage, and manipulate any data that users pass in and we store in variables. So what's the real difference between a property and a field? Well, a field is a variable that is only accessible from inside the object or from inside an instance of the class. And so when we build our classes, we're going to create private variables, and these will become fields because we can only change the value of those with our code that's actually inside the object. It's a private variable declared in the class. A property is a variable that can be set or read from the outside. And so the user working with their object is going to use properties to communicate with the object as far as setting individual variable values. Properties enable a class to expose a public way of getting and setting various values. Now, what's really cool about a property, what differentiates it from a field, is it hides any implementation of what we're doing with that value that's being passed in, and it also hides any verification code we're writing, because we never want to just accept data from the user without verifying it to make sure that it complies with a range or values or whatever. Now, in the end, we use properties and fields together. So let's take a look at some code. We're going to jump out into Visual Studio, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a project called Properties and Fields. You will see a copy of this in the Work Files folder, and you can look at that for reference, or you can just follow along here and build it. So notice I'm going to call this Properties and Fields and save that. Notice we're creating a directory for our solution right down here in the lower right. And as soon as this opens, I'm going to create a very simple little interface. Okay, on my form, I want to drop a text box. Well, let me let it wake up here. I want to drop a text box and a button. So there's my button. And let me scroll right down here. Here's my text box. Okay, and so we'll grab these and position them the way we want, and we'll push that aside. Now what I want to do here is I want to be able to put an age in this text box. We won't worry with labels right now, but I want to put a number, an integer in here, and then when the user clicks the button, we want to load that. We want to pass that into our object, but we want to check to see if it meets certain standards that we have. And so let's create an object here. We're going to right click on Properties and Fields, and we're going to add a class, and we will just, keeping with our old standards, we'll just leave it as class 1. Notice I could change the name to whatever I would like, but I'll leave it as class 1 for now. And in class 1, in the code, I want to show you a couple of things. First of all, I could do public int age. All right, that would work, and every instance of the class would be able to access that variable age and load it. The problem is there's no way to verify what's going on. There's no way to control this, and so that's not a good deal. So we don't want to do that. What we do want to do is a private int age, and notice this is lowercase. C# is case sensitive, and so I can have a variable that's private int age lowercase and private int age uppercase age, and those are two different variables. So there's my private int age. Now, to make a property, this is a field, right? Because it's private. You can't make any changes to age. You can't load it or read it from outside the class. Only code written inside the class is capable of that. And so to create a property out of this, we would do a public int capital age, and then we're going to do our get and set. And to do a property, we do a get, and we return age. And notice that is, we're going to return this age. So whatever value it's currently set in the object is what's going to get returned back to the user. Then we're going to do a set. And on this one, this gets a little interesting. We're going to set the private field up there, age, lowercase age, equal to value. Now, where did value come from, and what is that? Value is an intrinsic variable that's built into this property setup. Notice this is very, very similar to a method, but we have some automatic things going on here in the background. When someone tries to use this, and I'll demo this in just a moment, and they try to read this, it's calling this get assessor. Then when someone tries to set a value, it calls the set assessor. And so if someone sets age, capital age, that they can see to 21, that gets passed into the value variable that's intrinsic to this process, and that gets loaded into age. And so that gets loaded into this, and then the next time someone tries to read this age, notice it calls this get command and it returns to them age, which is the current value of that. All right, now that's a little convoluted. Make sure that makes sense to you. And when you got that, you're ready to go on to the next step and you can see the real value of this, okay? So what I'm going to do is stop right here. Join me in part 2 of properties and fields. We'll finish out the code and let you see properties and fields working together.